Today, we witness one of the most interesting events in aviation history. On March 23, 1993, Aeroflot Flight 593 departed from Russia to Hong Kong without any issues. However, the calmness was disrupted when a child took control of the plane carrying 75 passengers, and the pilots did not have time to listen to the cockpit. On March 23, 1994, an Aeroflot Airbus A310 was preparing for a flight from Moscow's Sheremetyevo International Airport to Kai Tak Airport in Hong Kong. This aircraft was relatively new, having been leased to Aeroflot on December 11, 1992. On board were 63 passengers and 12 crew members. Among the 63 passengers, 40 were Russian citizens, and approximately 30 of them were family members of airline employees. Aeroflot is the largest airline in Russia, founded in 1923, making it the world's oldest active airline. Aeroflot has been involved in numerous fatal accidents, resulting in a total of 8,231 passenger fatalities. However, from 1946 to 1989, the airline was involved in 721 incidents, but from 1995 to 2017, it was only involved in 10 incidents. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Aeroflot quickly rebuilt its reputation, becoming a company with new aircraft and very experienced pilots with clean records. Flight 593 took off at 4:39 p.m. local time. The captain of Flight 593 was 40-year-old Andrei Viktorovich Danilov, who was hired by Aeroflot in November 1992. Danilov had accumulated over 9,500 hours of flight time. The 33-year-old Igor Vasilyevich Piskaryov, who was hired by Aeroflot in October 1993, served as the second captain and had a total of 5,885 flight hours. The co-pilot was 39-year-old Captain Yaroslav Vladimirovich Kudrinsky, who was hired by Aeroflot in November 1992. Kudrinsky had a total of 8,940 hours of flight experience. He was a very experienced pilot capable of flying different types of aircraft. There were 9 flight attendants on the plane. After picking up passengers for a connecting flight in Siberia, the plane was scheduled to continue to Hong Kong. The journey was smooth, and 4 hours into the 10-hour flight, they had left Siberia behind. Captain Danilov then took a break, leaving Kudrinsky to control the aircraft for the remainder of the flight. The plane was cruising at 10,000 meters on autopilot, and the flight was calm and windless. However, this calmness would not last. Captain Kudrinsky's children, Eldar and Yana, were also on the flight and headed to the cockpit to surprise their father. Once in the cockpit, they were very excited and kept asking their father questions about the plane. Kudrinsky then asked if they wanted to sit in the pilot's seat, which they eagerly accepted. His daughter Yana sat first. Kudrinsky engaged the control stick, which did not disengage the autopilot but allowed a slight left turn, making Yana think she was flying the plane. He then directed the plane back to its predetermined course. By this time, the plane was near Siberia. Next, it was Eldar's turn to sit in the pilot's seat. Eldar found the control stick a bit stiff and turned it more forcefully than his sister had. However, because the autopilot was engaged, the plane did not turn. Kudrinsky then disengaged the control stick, causing the plane to suddenly start turning. He quickly re-engaged the control stick, returning the plane to its previous position, and Eldar realized he couldn't control the plane. While Kudrinsky was attending to his daughter, Eldar began to turn the control stick left and right. Kudrinsky noticed the increasing tilt of the plane, which seemed to be turning on its own, though the pilots couldn't understand why. The straight line on the display had turned into a curve, indicating the plane was circling. As they tried to understand the problem, the plane tilted to 45 degrees, far beyond what it could handle. The plane was traveling at 500 kilometers per hour, and the tilt caused passengers to be thrown from their seats. The nose of the plane began to rise, and the pilots couldn't reach the control stick because of the tilt. Eldar, the only one able to hold the control stick, tried to follow his father's instructions. The increased G-force pinned him to his seat, and his father couldn't do anything. The plane was rapidly losing altitude, and Captain Kudrinsky urgently needed to take control, but the plane's speed made it impossible for him to move. The G-force made him feel twice as heavy. Amid their confusion, alarms began to sound, signaling that the autopilot had disengaged. The plane was now entirely under Eldar's and Piskaryov's control. Adding to the chaos, another alarm indicated the engine was about to stall. The plane started to dive, descending at a terrifying speed of 200 meters per second. If nothing was done immediately, the plane would crash in less than a minute. Piskaryov used all his strength to pull the control stick and managed to lift the plane's nose, attempting to regain control. The plane started to climb rapidly. Finally, Kudrinsky managed to get back into his seat. Controlling the plane was very difficult, and it began to turn, directing its course back towards the ground. After a series of desperate maneuvers, the two pilots managed to pull the plane out of its dive. However, they were unaware of their position and had run out of time. Air traffic control, 500 kilometers from the Mongolian border, was trying to contact the plane, but it was too late. The plane had crashed. The first search team began looking for the plane in the cold Siberian terrain in less than 2 hours. They finally came across the wreckage of Flight 593 in a forested area. It was soon confirmed that there were no survivors among the 75 people on board. An investigation team was immediately formed to determine how a new aircraft could crash so suddenly. Investigators were especially curious about the child's body found in the cockpit. The black box was recovered, and investigators were shocked to learn that the captain had allowed his children to sit in the cockpit. They were baffled as to how such experienced pilots could hand over control of the plane to children. Everyone wondered why the plane crashed, and it seemed clear that a child having control was the primary cause. However, investigators considered other possible reasons as well. Initially, Aeroflot tried to keep the situation under wraps, but the information eventually leaked to the media, and it became known that a child had been in control of the plane. The black box data confirmed that Eldar had been holding the control stick while the plane was on autopilot. However, new findings showed that the autopilot disengaged 2.5 minutes before the crash. How could this be? Subsequent flight simulations revealed that turning the control stick for more than 30 seconds would disengage the autopilot, but the pilots were unaware of this because they had been given incorrect training. Normally, an alarm would sound when the autopilot disengaged, but on this type of aircraft, only a red light would illuminate, which none of the pilots noticed. They had received insufficient training. While trying to understand what was happening, the pilots did not realize the issue. Worse still, some functions of the plane remained in autopilot mode, while others were in manual mode, explaining why the plane kept descending and then trying to climb again. When the indicators went off, the pilots couldn't detect this. Investigators concluded that the fault did not lie entirely with the child, but also involved judgment and concentration errors. The most tragic aspect was that these planes had a safety mechanism to prevent crashes. If the pilots had simply let go of the control stick when the plane kept tilting or moving up and down, it would have stabilized itself. However, the pilots were unaware of this, as their training did not cover it, and their attempts to regain control only worsened the situation. The blame did not rest solely with the crew. There were many contributing factors. This accident taught the entire aviation industry a great deal. Subsequently, all airlines began providing emergency training for pilots, using simulations to explain the events of this crash. All airlines learned many valuable lessons from this accident. It was built in memory of the people who lost their lives on Aeroflot Flight 593.